Online.
Hello.
We are online.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Sachiv again from Box Range. Thanks for tuning in our broadcast. Uh, we uh, we had said you to we are call Mr. Emiel van EST for Toyota, KATA, and process thinking. So we welcome Mr. Emiel for in our
Thank
live
you.
webinar. Thank you. So please.
Yeah, let's kick it off. Well, I'm honored to tell you something about Toyota KATA, and I think it's important to start with a little framework before we dive into Toyota KATA. But maybe first, I always like to start with this question. What is the question that you expect to get answered today? And maybe you can answer it, or maybe if some people are watching us, they can put it in the chat so we can get some interaction going, because I would like to make it a little bit interactive if we can. So, from your perspective, what would you like to get answered?
Yes, sir. Our question is about what is KATA. I think this is a very interesting, like you can say, it's a question. What is Toyota? Yes, a lot of people familiar about the Toyota production system and all that, but
Okay.
we think that there's a KATA thing is new for us. So a lot of people think this what is the KATA? What is KATA practices? Kata is related a lot of thing about the Japanese terminology or Japanese practices and all that. So we are expecting you say about processing, how we think about the process and all that, and what is the contribution of Toyota Kata in the process thinking and all that. So we expected this for what is actually the horrible thing about Kata and all that. Yes, sir.
All right, let's get started. So for me, a leading question has always been how to make continuous improvement truly continuous, and that has been, I think, at least in the lean community, a struggle for at least 30 years. That's also my background. I started out more than 20 years ago with process improvement. I didn't know it was called lean back then, but I figured out quickly, and I started reading a lot about lean and practicing with processes from the clients that we were working with. And maybe 10 years in, I started to discover that that some elements were missing. If we help the client to improve, from the clients that we were working with, usually we could make an improvement, but once our engagement with the client was ended, usually it slided back. And it's not my definition of continuous improvement. So I started looking further. And 2010, I came across this book from Mike Roter. It's Toyota KATA. And since then, I started working with it because Mike Roter, he wrote many things that I already experienced. And he also gave words to some stuff that I experienced but didn't really know how to articulate. So for me, it was an eye-opening book. And I started working with it, and that was in 2010. And in 2013, I became a publisher. I published this translation of Toyota KATA, still selling today. So since 2010, I've been working with Toyota KATA, but still I see some similar problems, even with Toyota KATA, that continuous improvement still is not coming continuous in the organizations that I witness. So I started digging further, and I came across this little booklet. It's not from Jeffrey Liker. Many people know the Toyota way from Liker. It's a red book. This is a book that was written by Toyota themselves in 2001, and it's very much about Toyota's culture. So I started thinking and learning more and more about why is it that Toyota is successful and so many other organizations that try to copy material from Toyota are struggling. So that's a bit of my journey there, and I think if we want to understand Toyota's success, we really need to get back to basics. And if you think about it, I think the real basics of Toyota success is down to process thinking. And I think I will build a case with you that the Toyota uses process thinking on a way deeper level than most of us do. So, and I also learned that process thinking has many different definitions for different people. So let me share with you my thinking about it. So what you see here is a little diagram where you have a process and that generates the outcomes. It's the results that people are after. And this is very basic, right? If you want to get better results, you somehow need to improve the processes that generate these results. So if you want better results, you need better processes. That's the very basic of process thinking. But I have a bit of a weird mind. So I started thinking, hey, what if better processes are actually the outcome of something else? What would be the process that generates or whatever it is, right? There are a few question marks there. What is it that generates better processes? And if you start thinking about it, it becomes very quickly clear that there are people that are doing. People create better processes. They use better processes. They maintain those processes and they improve those processes. But if you want better processes, get the better results that everybody's after, you also need to somehow work on better employees. And that's a bit of a strange wording, of course, but you need to have the people capable and motivated to work on these processes, to use them in the proper way and to improve them. And well, you may see it coming. What if better employees is the outcome of something? So how do you get better employees that are capable and motivated to improve the process, to use the processes, etc., so we get the better results that we are after? And well, this is an interesting question, and you can go on many tangents there, but I think there's a lot of information out there. Here you see a sheet from Gallup. Gallup does some worldwide research every other year, where they measure how many people are engaged in the workplace and how many are actively disengaged and how many people are in between. So if you look at the definition of engaged people, those are the people that work with passion and feel a profound connection to their company. They drive innovation, move the organization forward. Those are the people that we want, right? And we want as many of them as we can. Worldwide, they found about 13% of the people that match this definition. And on the other end, the banner is on top of it, I read it from here. The actively disengaged people aren't just unhappy at work, they are busy acting out their unhappiness. Every day, these workers undermine what their engaged co-workers accomplish. And this group is about twice as big as the people that are engaged. So if you think about striving for continuous improvement, and you have a small group that wants to improve stuff, and another group that wants to undermine that. And there's a big group in the middle, the non-engaged employees. They are essentially checked out. They're sleepwalking through their workday, putting in time, but no energy or passion. And I think if you look around, you can see in many parts of the world that this group is by far the biggest. So if you are looking for continuous improvement, then you need a group of people that has the continuous energy to work on these improvements. And so far, there's only a very small portion of the people that has this energy, only about 50% or so. And there is another staggering statistic, and it's this is the conclusion that Gallup made. The actively disengaged employees continue to outnumber their engaged employees by nearly a factor. So that's a real big problem. And there are many differences in the world. I don't have the statistics of Asia, but you see here at the bottom, Netherlands, my country is at the very bottom. We have the lowest number of engaged people in the world, at least in Europe. Denmark, for example, they have twice as many. But fortunately, in the Netherlands, the portion of disengaged people is not that high. It's about 11%. If you look for France, for example, it's 26% over 9. So group in France that is actively disengaged is actually 3 times bigger. So it's a big problem if you want to achieve something, if you have these kinds of engagement distributions in your organization. And there is not even all a statistic that I found somewhere. Says, oh, this is still from Gallup, right? Employees typically don't join an organization being disengaged. But if you have someone who's fully disengaged and they enter the company, they fill a vacancy, then something went wrong in the hiring process, right? If you hire someone who's actually disengaged, something went wrong. But what you see here is that the portion of people that are not engaged or actively disengaged grows over time, and it grows very quickly. About half of them in 6 months, and here more than 10 years, you only have about a quarter of the people that are still engaged worldwide. So there's something going on. It's not so much that the people are engaged, but disengaged, but somehow they enter a system that kills their engagement. And how does that come? That's then the question. And in HR environment, there's this well-known secret that when people leave, they don't leave their organization, they leave the manager. And so this gives us a clue. If you want to answer this question, how to get better employees, you probably need to have a serious look at the way we manage. So if we have better management, it creates an environment for people to work at their best and to put their best ideas forward, then we can create these better processes that will generate these better results. All right. So, but in my mind, okay, how do we get better management? What's the next one there? And if you think about it, you probably come to the conclusion that if you want better management, somehow you need to look at leadership as well. So I distinguish between management and leadership. And, well, you see this coming. How do you get better leadership? Well, the jury is still out on this one. So if you all summarize this, then you get something that I call process thinking to the fourth power. So if you want better results, you need better processes. If you want better processes, you need better people. If you want better people, you need better management. And if you want better management, you need better leadership. So this is a basic way of thinking that I think Toyota uses on a very sophisticated level. And if you look at it, if you look at Lean from a historic perspective, Lean has been very much focused on the process. And we have been working on these processes to improve the results, and that has all been very much tool-oriented. And somewhere at the turn of the century, it became clear that it wasn't enough, and that Mike Rother forward, he said, I need to investigate. And there was an idea that it had something to do with management, but nobody knew what was going on. So, but after 6 years of research, Mike, he wrote his book, and what he showed is that typically managers at Toyota, they spend about 50% of their time teaching their employees certain skills. So what Mike Rother did with his book is that he put the focus away from the tools and way more to the people part. So I think that's the biggest contribution that Mike Rother made with his book KATA. And like I told you, I found out that Toyota KATA by itself is still not enough, and that there's still something more needed. And that's what this little green book came on my path. And it's about Toyota's culture, and it's way more about culture and mindset. And I think we could call that spirit. You need a certain spirit in your organization to get continuous improvement going. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. All right. So, from my perspective, this culture stuff is still a missing link in all our continuous improvement efforts. And I think it's very hard still to understand why Toyota is able to create this culture of continuous improvement and why it's so hard to replicate that. Somewhere there. But if you, and here's just a quote about this booklet. It's hard to find on the internet, but there is some material available in Toyota's sustainability reports. And this is from the introduction. In this booklet, we have identified and defined the fundamental DNA, which summarizes the unique and outstanding elements of our company culture and success. So if I read something like that, I get very interested. And if you look at Mike Rose's research question, it was, what are the unseen managerial routines and thinking that lie behind Toyota's success with continuous improvement and adaptation? So it's clear that these two books have a link and that they are connected. But for now, yeah, you were saying?
Yeah, I was saying that these books should be noted. Yes.
Yeah, and especially for the past maybe 5 years or so, this Toyota Way 2001 has been on my radar. Creating material for it and studying it and engage with people to talk about it. But for today, we want to focus on Toyota KATA, right?
Yes.
And I think it's important that to notice that humans have a brain, right? And people are not just rational, people are also emotional. And I think it's important to notice that Lean and maybe Agile and other efforts as well, they have been very much on the rational side of things. And there is also an emotional side. So somewhere in the future, we still have to address that. But for today, we will focus on the rational part of improvement and about how Toyota does that. So Toyota KATA is a way of teaching. The essence of Toyota KATA is that what Toyota is teaching their people is scientific thinking. And if you I don't know about your language, but if you translate scientific into Dutch, it's called wetenschap. And you see the German translations as well. And I forgot the last one is the Danish one. These words of science in our languages literally mean the creation of knowledge. And I don't know what's the translation in your language, and does it have a meaning like that as well?
Scientific in Urdu would be meaning something which is something which is related to research.
Research.
So yeah, so we have to do research, scientific research. That's how we call it.
All right. So it's also finding out new things, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Finding out new things. True.
So, and I think that's unfortunately that's not so much the case in the English language, but Toyota KATA is very much about creating new knowledge, doing things, finding out a way of achieving something that you currently don't know how to do. So, if there is an issue and you already have an answer how to address that, for example, if someone is sick and doesn't show up in the morning, you know how to deal with that, right? So there is no need for KATA for that. So do not use KATA. That's very important because some people do not use KATA if you already know the answer. KATA is only for creation of new knowledge. And yeah, it's simple, but it's sometimes overlooked because you get caught up in all kinds of routines that become a kind of window dressing if you are not careful. So, what did Mike Roeder find? What Mike Roeder found was a pattern of working and thinking that you can find throughout Toyota on each level in the organization. If you're on the shop floor, you can find it. If you go to management meetings, you can find it. If you go to the boardroom, you still can find the basic way of thinking. And you may wonder why it took 6 years to come up with this, because if you look at it like this, it's pretty simple, right? You need the first part of the improvement KATA is you need to have an understanding of direction, where do you want to go. Then you need to grasp the current condition. You need to understand where you currently are. Then you need to establish a target condition, and then you experiment with the target condition. And experimenting being the important word here, because you are trying to find new knowledge, right? That's what he found, and what he found is that managers at Toyota spent about 50% of teaching this. And teaching within Toyota is it's not that obvious. It's an interaction between the manager and the employee, and it's not standardized. Every manager has its personal touch there. What Mike Roeder did is he created a routine to practice this teaching, and he called it coaching KATA. So there is a coaching routine that is used to teach you. And maybe I should also explain what the word KATA means and where it comes from. So in Japanese language, KATA means two different things. It's a way of doing things. That's one meaning. In that sense, it might be a little bit cultural, have a cultural dimension. But the other one, and it's very well known for martial arts, KATA is a routine to practice something to build a skill. But that's the background of the word KATA, because what Mike found is that people at Toyota are practicing this every day. And this practicing and this repetition in practicing led him to use the word KATA for. I also found that some other languages have the word KATA in Indonesian and just means a word, but in Japanese it means. And what I would like to point out to you is that the coaching cycles in this image, I put it below the experimentation phase, the improvement. Because the coaching KATA, the very first question in the coaching KATA, what is your target condition? And then if you have a target condition, you can use this coaching KATA routine very well. If you don't have the target condition yet, how do you coach then? And that's what I found to be more important for me to research, because I found that quite often there is no clear target condition. So that's where my work has started to focus. I meet organizations that have dozens of internal continuous experts. They are interested in KATA like many, and so I get invited, and then I think that KATA can add something to the continuous improvement. Maybe please give me your definition of an improvement better in your organization. And when I ask that question, it becomes very clear that there is no clear answer in many organizations. So understanding the direction is really key, what I found. So my focus has been to help people to build this target condition so that we can get into this experimentation mode and use the coaching cycle like Mike Roeder. And this image shows you the very simplest way I have found to look at it. And also, if you look back at this image, right, there are two routines. These two routines, the coaching KATA and the improvement KATA, they are used by two different people. So here you see, maybe if you can get the banner below them, you can see it.
Banner, okay.
You can see the full slide. Right.
Yes.
Awesome. So I like to look at this image as the smallest building block of an organization. What you see here are two people that are having a conversation, maybe a KATA style conversation about something that they want to improve. So one person is an employee, or we like to refer to it as an improver, and this person is practicing the improvement KATA to become a better improver. And the other person is a coach, and he is using the coaching KATA to teach the improver to become a better improver. And usually, within the Toyota context, that coach is the manager. So it's a hierarchical relationship. And they have they have this interaction, and there is a base for this interaction. But the KATA is a storyboard, KATA storyboard. It could also be an A3 or something similar, whatever it is. But you need some documents and some data to be able to have a proper conversation. And I want to zoom in on this storyboard because this is what I created from Mike's work, this is the simplest form I found to lead people through the very first 3 steps. What you see here are 3 columns. Here's a column, now we are here. The second column, here we want to go. The third column, what must we do? And these first 2 columns, they have this horizontal line in between. So here we are talking about results, and here we are talking about conditions. So for me, understanding the direction is very much about understanding what is the result that needs to change. What I am always trying to guide people to is to be clear on the result that needs to change. And what I'm looking for is a noun with 2 different numbers there. So you may have a lead time of X and we want to change it to Y or something like that. So real first question, if I'm looking at understanding the direction, is what is the result that has to change? So once that's clear, then you can start looking at conditions. And the first thing that you need to understand is the current condition. And what are you looking for if you are looking for the current condition? What you are looking for are all the nuts and levers that you can have an influence on the result. Somehow you want to build a case that if you want to change this result, what are the possibilities to change it? You want to find them all. And what I found is that many people have difficulty finding this. So I came up with a trick to get the conversation going, and I call it the sabotage question. What if you wanted to destroy the current result? How would you do it? And then usually people get very creative. That gives you a go if you want to get started. But what you want to find in this box here are all the knobs and levers, all the conditions, all the characteristics that contribute to the current result, and you want to quantify it. So all these conditions, they are in all these knobs and levers, they have a certain position, and because they are in this position, we have the current result. So if you want to change a certain phenomenon, you have to understand the phenomenon. That's really what we understanding the current condition is all about. And once you have that, then you can start establishing a target condition. For me, it's just mirroring the current condition to the target condition. Does that make sense? So if you have a result that you want to change here, so it currently has a certain output, and you want to change that to another output, then the characteristics that have an influence are still the same. So you can just mirror it. And then you have to figure out what you want these knobs and levers that have an influence on this phenomenon, what position do you want them? And there may be some characteristics that you don't want to change or you are not allowed to change. Okay, just copy them and copy the value that is associated with it. And hopefully you have some more characteristics that will have an influence on and that you are actually willing and able and allowed to change. And then you need to figure out in what positions that you get them. So you get the intended result. And what you see here in this explanation about conditions is that it goes back to process thinking, right? If you want a result, you need a process. If you want to change the result, you have to change the process. So here we are really figuring out what are the process characteristics or the design characteristics. It can be anything in that sense, but what are the characteristics that we need to influence to change the result? And that's this process thinking going on two levels here. But these are the three first steps of the improvement KATA on one sheet of paper with this process thinking behind it. And then you have this experimenting towards the target condition. Ideally, you are experimenting with obstacles that hold you from achieving the target condition, right? So ideally, the actions that you do address an obstacle, and this obstacle is identified somewhere between those two columns here. So there's a difference between current condition and the target condition, and that's actually my definition of an obstacle. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So for me, an obstacle is a characteristic that has to change. And all the work in these previous steps is to identify those obstacles. And once you know the obstacles, then you can start experimenting to find solutions to overcome this obstacle. So until now, I explained this very linearly. Actually, that's not how I use it. What I usually do is I ask people to tell their story, and I just listen to their story, and I take notes on this piece of paper. So if I hear something like a problem, okay, I have a place for that. I put it in the obstacle box. If I hear something about an action, I put it in the action box. If I hear something about results, either a current result or a target result, I put it here. And if I hear something about conditions or about something people aspire to achieve, I filter the story and put it in these boxes. And so I first capture the story, and then with this logic in this form, I can formulate questions. For example, if I have a very action-oriented manager who wants to do something, I can ask me, okay, you have this action in mind. Can you explain me why it's important? What's the problem that you're actually addressing? So then, once I get the story and I get the actions, for example, I start talking back to it. So usually in action, many managers, they have made an analysis, but they don't make it explicit. They have an action and they want to take that action, get it going. But if you just set out the action for people to do, people will not be able to understand the reasoning behind it. So I first ask about, okay, what's the obstacle that you are addressing? And then, okay, how is that currently, and how will it improve if you have taken your action? Then I can start talking back to the first two columns, which are the most important ones. And I can also ask, hey, why is it important to change that? Then I'm get to the level. So with this logic in this form, I can go back and forth. I don't have to follow a very linear format. That's very helpful to build connection with people. To really let them see that you're interested and that you have and that you want to really understand what's going on. That's very helpful. So,
Yes, it seems very generic and yet very much useful in any kind of situation with different backgrounds, with different fields. We can use it when there is a problem, when there is an obstacle, we can use it. The current situation and where we want to be.
yeah, and you can use it anywhere, right? It's not just business processes. It's because the improvement KATA. If I go back here a little bit.
Yes, we can use as a like production line, and we can say it's a different corporate sector, like we can like hospitals and schools and all that. We can use it also.
Yeah.
This will be very,
Yeah.
yes.
Because what you see here, it doesn't say anywhere you have to make cars to be able to use it.
True.
So what we like to think about this improvement kata is that it is content free.
Yeah.
That's very important. You can use it anywhere. You can also use it in your family. If your child has a problem or your wife wants to be happy or whatever, you can use this kind of thing. So I think it's universal and it's very helpful to start practicing this way of thinking. And let's see, what did I have in store for you? Well, we addressed this more or less, right? So many people are, at least in the Lean community, they are familiar with an A3. Many people at Toyota are using it. And I've been teaching this to students as well for about a year. But I think the way of teaching with a classical A3 is complicated for beginners, especially if you don't have proper guidance from an experienced coach. And I find using the storyboard I just outlined to you, it's way easier for people to get basic thinking right. Whenever I have an encounter now and whenever I start working with a client, I don't use the A3, I use the KATA storyboard. Because it's very simple, I think. And with this simple storyboard, you can build a chain of stories. And here we get to strategy deployment, motion coverage, and well, those two. And what you see here is these storyboards. They are here at the top and here and here. And what you really want to achieve is that the work that the people on the shop floor are doing, in the end, it will contribute to an overall objective that the organization has. And that's very important because in the Lean community, we have the idea, the conception that every waste that we remove is an improvement. I can tell you that 80% or so, or 90% of all the waste that you remove does not end up at the bottom line and doesn't create a meaningful result at top level. So I find it crucial, to build this chain of stories, to interlink them properly, to have the proper conversations about it, and really make sure that if we ask people to spend time on an improvement, that we did everything we can to make that effort as meaningful as possible. We're still going beyond our threshold of knowledge. We are still creating new knowledge, so there may be things that don't work out as intended, but we need to increase the chance that it will be meaningful. We need to make that as big as possible, and that needs a rigorous way of doing these kind of analysis and have this kind of dialogue. Building this chain of stories, I think, is absolutely critical to create continuous improvement in your whole organization. And this dialogue is really why. Sorry. So if you look at work being done on this storyboard, the answer why it's important should be on a higher end storyboard. And why this work here is important, it's on this board. But you really need to be able to have this conversation that everything is interlinked and that we are not sub-optimizing or doing something that will harm somebody else down the line or whatever. But you really need to synchronize all this. And in the end, what you want is that the right conversation takes place at the right level in the organization with the right people. That's what you can build. You can all build it very simple. You don't need a difficult X matrix or something like that. You only need these storyboards to be able to create these things. From there, well, that really is what I had to share on the content side. Now is a good time to take some questions or conversation.
Yes. So the first question that I've been asked, sir, is that that you are preferring storyboards over A3 reporting?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah. So in A3 reporting, we have responsible, and we try to come up with responsible and accountable person. and with 5 whys. So how can we communicate through storytelling all those whys? And uh, like on an A3 we have sections in which we do, let's say, the Ishikawa diagram. We draw an Ishikawa diagram for 4Ms, and then we
Definitely.
do 5Y, and then we go to cause and effect. So how can we do it on a storyboard? A
Okay.
storyboard can tell us the story, but how can we use it? If you can just elaborate, please.
Right. So if you are asking 5 times why or using an Ishikawa diagram, for example, what you're
Yeah.
really trying to do is to understand current conditions that lead to the current results.
Yeah.
So what you see here, this is just a blank space. If you want to put in an Ishikawa diagram, please do. If you want to put in a current value stream map, you can put it in this place, right?
Okay.
So you can use all the tools that you know, build an understanding of the current condition. Something strange I do with an Ishikawa diagram, for example, if you have an Ishikawa diagram on this side, I want it to see copied here. So I also copy the Ishikawa diagram to the target condition. So if we understand with an Ishikawa diagram why we have the current result, we could also use the Ishikawa diagram to predict how that would look like if we would have the desired result. Right? So I use this mirroring all the time. If we have, for example, if you make a Pareto analysis of something,
Yeah.
you could put it here in the current condition maybe, or even in or you could use Pareto analysis for your current result.
Okay.
If you make it on the left-hand side, please mirror it. So I always want to see two of the same things. What is it currently and what is it in the future? What does it mean? So if, for example, you make a Pareto analysis and you find one cause that attribute maybe 40% of it, it's very simple to predict. It's very simple to predict. Then it becomes very simple to create a Pareto diagram where this 40% is eliminated or reduced, and then you can calculate the outcome. So that's how I use it. So it's format free, just a way of giving all your tools and all your thoughts a place in this simple diagram.
Great. And obviously, a diagram and a board like that is much more better than a report, which is like it is kind of difficult to get results out of it, but it is always easy to get results out of diagrams and a story like this.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
try to put your complete management report on.
Yeah, obviously.
So you start condensing the fonts and so on.
Yes.
You want to do it really simple. The visual is good. Lots of numbers is good. Not just on the date, but you want everything to be quantified, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
all the classical things that we already know and are familiar with for the past decades, you can still use it. But I use it twice all the time. I mirror it. That
Okay.
creates a lot of clarity for people that get it.
Great. Great. The other question that is coming
Yes,
is
please.
about the employee empowerment. Like the all that you have just explained kata in as a practice of change management, of solving problems and changing the environment. So as you have already specified the brain, the human brain, the rational thinking and the emotional thinking, so what about the emotional thinking, the emotional factor that is there? How can we cope up with that?
Yeah, that's a very big topic.
Yeah, that's the question that has come up.
But precise.
Well,
It
if
is,
you have some echo on the line, so if you think about this diagram, right, and about
Yes.
the emotional sides of it, and etc. What you see here are relations, and you see two kinds of relations. You see relations on the content side. So
Yep.
the information on this board has a relation to the information on this board. The information on this board here has a relation to this board. So you see all these relations on the content side, but you also see relations here between people.
Yeah.
Because this person will be talking with this person about this storyboard. This person will be talking about this storyboard with this person. And if somehow we need to coordinate something, we get these two people and we start talking around this storyboard to say, hey, what's your part and what's the part for the other person? And then we start getting these catchpole conversations, right?
Yeah.
So if you start thinking about emotions, the emotional side of people, what I find is that it's easier to start talking about the content, about the facts. And so as soon as, if you do the content conversation properly, then you move away from blame. So if you facts are facts, you don't have to discuss that. Everybody can see that there's something like a piece of paper on the table or whatever, right? Everybody can see that. If the machine broke down, everybody can see that. So if you engage with people on the content side, people start feeling safer and safer. And if you do that consequently, people will open up. Some will take longer than others. If you show that it's really the content that you're interested in and you're not blaming the people, then on the emotional side you're on the right track. There's a lot more to it, but I find it best to. I think many people on the shop floor they will be very happy if people finally start talking about the issues that they face every day, and if team leaders and managers start addressing this instead of blaming people or pushing them to work harder, really confronting issues in the workplace, you start building trust with your people. And if there is an issue, if there is an issue in this relation that doesn't resolve by talking about content, then there's probably some emotional stuff in the way, and you may need some other ways to deal with that. But the starting point for me is always start talking about the work, because that's why all the people come to the workplace in the first place.
True.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so now onward, we can use it like you can say lean KATA tool as a related to interconnected with the Ishikawa diagram and other tools you can say we can use this. So yes, Appa.
Was there a question? No, right?
Saad, what was your question again?
I said that we can use KATA and other tools combined.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yes, okay.
So you don't have to throw you don't have to throw anything away that you learned before if you start using KATA. It's but what you don't want to do is use a tool because you need to use a tool because of some kind of implementation program. You want to use a tool because you figured out that you need it in this specific situation. Just don't do 5S because that's in the program. Figure out what's the problem and figure out a solution, and it might very well be a 5S solution. But somehow we started having things backwards. We implement the tools and then we expect the problems to disappear. That's not the way it works. You need to identify the problem, study the problem, and then use the proper tools to eliminate them.
True. And using Gamba and Obeya practices in order to communicate with people and to get this culture more and more in the factory or in a workplace.
Yeah, definitely. So Now, these storyboards here at the bottom, they would typically be at the Gemba, at the workplace.
At a camera. Yeah.
These boards here in the upper pyramid, they might be in an Obeya.
Yeah.
Or this might be one smaller Obeya. You might have a separate Obeya here on a separate part of the organization, and you might have Obeya for senior management.
Yes.
Depends on what's practical in your situation, how you organize that. But you want to have the information as close to the workplace as possible.
As close to the workplace as possible.
And yes, yes, Afan, please. Now I say that onward from now this KATA tool and KATA session, we will introduce KATA tools to all the industries in Pakistan and all that. We will try to communicate to use this KATA tool and all that related to other tools. So we can say that we can introduce and something like we can use it in a Gamba and all that. A Gamba, you can say, and Uber.
I think we need to be careful to call KATA a tool. But for me, KATA is not a tool. KATA is about a skill. And it's very,
practice, yes, sir.
And that's important. If people don't put KATA in the toolbox that you already have. KATA needs to be put in the mind.
True. So
it's a way of thinking. That's most important.
Yes. So where Pakistani industries are stuck now, sir, that we are having Gambas, we are having Obeyas, and people are looking towards these things. But what they actually do is that all those A3 reporting is going on in management at the management level, but the supervisor level and the below are not into it, and they are not kind of aware of all those practices. Even the Gamba is done by assistant managers and managers. The supervisor is there, but he cannot speak in Gamba because he's not very much well trained. So the training, or I should say development of employees is not yet at that level in Pakistan right now that we can kind of stimulate all these practices to the bottom. So that's why where comes the development part of employees is very much important.
And also the development of managers and leaders. Because what I found is that many managers also have great difficulty doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
In my part of the world. So if you want to make a start here, right? Because this diagram is still simple, right? It's 1 on 2. So I split it twice, but in reality it can be maybe 1 in 5 or something like that. So it would be much bigger. And if you want to make a start, I would advise to create a kind of a slice. Like if you can create the first connection between the top floor and the shop floor, it doesn't have to involve the whole organization. You could, for example, start working from a storyboard here, go to the person here, and then go to the shop floor here. Once you get such a slice working that you see the interconnections between what's happening on the shop floor and how it influences the results that the top floor is interested in. Once you get this first slice of the organization connected, then you can start copying and multiplying it to the sides. I think it's way more difficult to work it top down or bottom up. So you need to have a slice where you find a connection between the top floor and the shop floor. Then you can start copying it sideways. And in finding the people that you want to make this first slice with, it's important to look at the people that are most willing to learn this kind of stuff and want to contribute to it. And once people get the hang of it, other people will usually get interested. That would be my approach.
Great. That's great. Yes, sir. So do you have any questions and comments?
Me? Me?
Yes, yes, yes. We have a clear picture. Yes, we have a clear now about KATA and all that. We have a little bit question about this, but now we have clear about it. What is KATA and all that? Because a lot of people think about what is KATA and all that. Now in this session, I can understand about the KATA and all that. Now we can use it not tool as a, but process thinking and all that mindset. You can say you said about KATA is a mindset. You can say. So we'll use the KATA tool for in every process for process improvement and all that.
I think KATA is the root thinking process that is the root of auto success. So you need to get the thinking pattern. You thinking pattern. And this is just a very brief introduction. I have 3 books written about it. I mean, I could not never do that. So there's way more material available if you're interested. I distill very essence. That is what I presented here to you, and that's in my experience. What I presented to you is a free storyboard. It's the easiest way to get started.
Yeah. Yes. And sir, what we are getting in comments is right now that this storyboard. They are saying that we have lots of stories to put it on that storyboard.
Awesome.
And they will try this, and they will try this, and they will come up with something. Obviously, they will plot a diagram, and we may have another session related to this when we have all the stories together with it. So if we can share it with you, and if you can kind of put one story and we can discuss it later.
Yeah, sure we can. Let me format. So I've been working. I've been digitalizing my during the lockdown, right? And you start doing different things. So
Okay.
So the storyboard is really, I call it clarify your thinking. That's the focus. I created the document to that people can download, and
Okay, great.
I still need to work on this one, how to find your first answers and how to engage others. I gave a little introduction here today. I have multiple page documents about how you can practice this, and people can download it if they want. So you find a link here. There's a free manual. You can go to this link. If you leave your details there, you can download it. And like you said, if people are interested, we could do another session where I can give some feedback and some help how to further use this storyboard. How to on it.
Great, sir. And
Yes,
if
yes,
we
sir. Yes, sir.
and if we and if we have to disseminate this knowledge to factories, so we can also have webinars with other organizations in which the other organizations will be reaching you and will be having webinars with you.
Yeah, just let me know if I can help you. I will try to do that in every way possible.
Great, sir.
Because
Great.
there is a big gap. Not big gap, you can say. In Pakistan, there is a big opportunity for these kind of thinking and this kind of tool and all that. We can introduce different things because in Pakistan market, Afan said, it's a gap between assistant manager is doing this and all that at Gamba and all, but lower management staff is not doing. Also, you can say management staff is not clear about the KATA things and all KATA things and tools and all that about. So we have opportunity for this. We will call you next time also if you have any question or if you have any query regarding Toyota and all that. Okay.
And maybe a tip, maybe a last one. Just don't call it KATA. I use this form or the format. I just put 2 lines, 3 lines. If I am in a meeting or wherever, I use this way of thinking as a reference, and I make notes in this format for myself. And then I can see the gaps in the information that I get from people, also from managers, and I can ask questions given this format. So you don't need to tell people what you're doing. You can also just ask the question that you came up with by analyzing it in this way.
Good,
It's another
sir.
way to use it. Sometimes
Yeah.
these Japanese names and stuff that puts people off, right?
Yeah.
So just use the language that you would use. I mean, it's not the word that makes the difference; it's the thinking that makes the difference.
True. True, sir. True.
Yes,
And
yes, we can use it in our own language. We can say no to it.
Yeah, you can use it. You can use it. Teach it your kids and everywhere. I mean, this is really important.
true. True. So thank you very much, sir, for your generous time.
You're welcome.
It's a precious knowledge that you have shared, and not only knowledge, you have also given us with a tool which we can use. And lots of good comments are coming up for this, and they are like very much committed to use these tools, as you have said, in meetings and during investigation of the problems. So thank you very much, sir.
Pleasure.
We will contact you if there is anything else.
All right. Awesome. Just let me know.
Yes. Thank you, viewers. So we are going offline. Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.